Hi, I'm Bianca Manheaven, and welcome to Bank of Creativity, the first ever mini podcast series in Vanguard. Today's visual podcast episode consists of the future of fashion, a topic that is dear to my heart because fashion is something that I'm passionate about, as well as art. But for today's episode, we'll be tackling about fashion. By the way, this podcast will be a bit more personal because the facts are easy to look up in Google or different media sources such as Vogue or BOF. The facts presented in this podcast came from the knowledge I've acquired from different online courses I took while in quarantine. And I would like to start off by acknowledging the reality we are facing. So, as you all may know, the world is not at its best state. And this is something that I don't want or don't even need to point out because for the past 6 months or so, we are all struggling. And it's hard to hold on to hope, especially when things are all uncertain. To be honest, this podcast was supposed to be launched earlier. However, I've been struggling on being creative. Forgive me, but that's when I decided to strip things down and make things a little bit more personal. One thing I've realized was that if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't be exposed or we wouldn't be fully aware of the underlying issues the world has. So I'm generalizing it not just here in the Philippines, but around the world. Every single day I see people fighting their own battles. People have been struggling mentally and physically, as well as financially. All of the countries are struggling economically. So the world, again, is not at its best state. So why am I talking about this? It's because this is something that we shouldn't ignore. Anyway, now that everyone is at home, people who lost their jobs are either opening up small businesses to earn for their living or they're looking for other jobs. If there's one thing to point out is that there is a shift on how people perceive things. People are now relying on comfort more than ever. Comfort over style is the trend. It's basically in. And practically speaking, what's the point of dressing up at the comfort of your home? I think maybe it's because we got used to the mindset that we have to dress up for an occasion, for our own personal status, for our own expression, or just maybe for ourselves. But loungewear has been blowing up, and a lot of businesses, creatives, and designers have been struggling to keep their businesses alive. And since a lot of businesses have shut down, the best way to think about your business is by keeping it alive. You don't really have to be successful as of the moment, or your business doesn't have to be thriving. The only important thing is that there's income and it's alive. You wouldn't have to shut down your business. So if there's one thing that I've learned and I want to specialize in, that is the media of fashion. And if you're going to be particulate about the media of fashion, it's different from other industries. So the media of fashion has always been communicating differently. Their marketing strategies, the way how they present things, the way how they conceptualize, it's different. It's different to other creative industries. So it has always been selling the dream, the fantasy, or that attracts consumers to your brand. So if you don't know what the dream or the fantasy is, you remember when you see magazines and you just get attracted to how the person looks on the cover and how the dress looks good on the cover. So it's basically editorial. But now, as an art and fashion enthusiast, dressing up has been an avenue of my expression and creativity. The opportunity of dressing up every day has become my lifestyle, and now, with that being taken away, it made me look at the more practical and deeper side of fashion. Ever since quarantine started, I also started educating myself in areas that I'm passionate about. In this case, it's fashion. So I'm not just educating myself about the political issues and the issues around the world, but I'm as much as possible, I also want to educate myself on what I'm most passionate about. So learning more about the history of design, not just in fashion, and how certain pieces came to life, it opened up my eyes about the connection of fashion with our history. An example of what I've learned in one of the online courses I took was about the specific piece we use when we want to be comfortable or cozy. So the specific piece is the hoodie. It was first and widely worn around the 1970s and 80s by New York's hip-hop community, skateboarders, graffiti, and artists. So, if you're going to summarize it, basically black culture. But a hooded figure also arouses fear, and this is because the hoodie has always been the center of racial stereotypes then. So who would have thought that it's already 2020 and there are still cases or instances of racial discrimination in the States? So fashion is not modern because it shows culture. And what upsets me is that people think of fashion in a very little way. They don't look at it or they don't take it seriously, because they only think that it's just about the clothes. But for me, it's really more than just the clothes. I mean, the mark of the loungewear blowing up, that already made a mark in history. If maybe like 10 years from now, if you look back onto these days, you're going to discuss about how loungewear made its way to the fashion industry and how loungewear was on top of the charts. So I feel like everything that is happening right now and fashion comes along with it, it indeed marks in our history. So another example was the Spanish flu in 1918. That's when the gas masks started to emerge, and it started being a norm for 2 years. So the flu pandemic of 1918 brought this item into the public sphere, and now people have been making different versions of them. There are a lot of businesses that I see online on Instagram creating their own face masks, or even known designers creating their own face masks, and they're making a living out of it. Overall, besides the reflection or history of certain fashion pieces, there's been a move in fashion to practicality. So seasonless styles are the future of fashion for me, and I noticed that brands are focusing on establishing a point of view instead of selling or showing a dream/fantasy. So the fashion media again is different, and what I love about people right now, they're being creative in ways that they are standing up to something. They're standing true to their frequency. They have their own advocacy and they have their own voice, which is something that I feel is very important, because again, there are a lot of issues, there are a lot of things that we need to fix right now, and again, people are creative by using their brands as a platform for change. So the future of fashion may still be uncertain, but one thing's for sure: the industry is undergoing changes and it's adapting. So that concludes today's episode of Bank of Creativity. I hope that you have learned something new, and may you continue to invest in ideas and concepts to feed your own bank of creativity. Stay tuned for my next episode, in which we'll talk about the future of art. And yeah, even if this discussion was a bit more personal and a bit more business minded, creativity isn't limited to just art or just fashion or just any medium at all. Creativity is not limited to that. Creativity also shows in how you solve your own problems and how you come up with solutions to different issues today. So I hope that to all of the people who have reached this far in my podcast, you may be inspired on how you will perceive things, and you will be inspired on how to handle different issues. So there you go. I haven't been talking about my insights and my perspective about these different issues because I feel like it wouldn't matter. But yeah, thank you so much for listening, and till my next episode.